are back with something new. I am one of your hosts, Amber Solaris, and welcome to the first ever season of Reign of Pain, where we dive into the edges of desire, thrill of endurance, with the art of sadomasochism and pain-related play. So, this is your space to explore, educate, power. Whether you're a seasoned player or you're just beginning your journey into this form of play. So pain play isn't just about sensation, it's about that sense of trust and connection and really transformation. Every episode here will shed light on different techniques, different explorations, journey. Of course, we'll talk about the safety stuff and the inner worlds of people who embrace the sting, the thud, and the different sensations while they surrender to seeing stars. So step into the night and embrace the unknown and find your own version of the Reign of Pain. And of course, as always, a little bit of a content warning. This is listener discretion advised. There is a content warning for potentially distressing topics. We will be discussing a multitude of adult-only topics here, and so you are encouraged to consider your own capacity before continuing. Welcome back, listeners. So this time, I get to talk to the fantastic Lee Harrington. So I got the long straw this time. Actually, no. Lovely Miss K ended up just being too tired. So I guess yay for me, though, because Lee happens to be one of my favorite people ever, and I absolutely love attending their classes. So welcome back, Lee, and congratulations on your recent nuptials.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me back. And it's funny that people keep saying this because it's also our wedding was on my boy and I, Bear Jew. They do trainings on the intersections of kink and trauma. Actually, if people want to keep an eye open for that over at Wicked Browns. I know, right? It's not a one class, it's a two-parter because you can't fit even the basics of trauma discussions into a one segment. It's not a thing. But our wedding was on our 2-year collarversary. And so it was funny because the other people were coming up and saying, congratulations and yay. And in my head, I'm like, we did the big one already. I peed on it. It's mine. Now we just get lots of boxes from Crate and Barrel showing up so that we have new dishes. And I joke about that, but it was such a blessing to get to have not just our wedding, but 3 weeks before. For listeners out there, might get an idea from this. We decided to have a kinky wedding themed party. So it was a full drag event. I showed up in a white wedding dress and my full beard.
Oh, I saw those photos.
My boy was wearing nothing but a jock strap and a kittle and their little yarmulke or kippah. And in Judaism, there's this concept called an ufruf, where you are brought before the entire congregation and the rabbi tells the story of your relationship and gives you blessings before the whole of the shul and does all that, right? But at the kinky one, 3 weeks beforehand, unplanned, a group of the kinky Jews that were there all said, well, is there an ufruf? And we said, we didn't plan one.
Oh my God.
Part of what is involved in an ufruf is after the blessings happen, the congregation all then gets candy and pelts it at the the bride and groom to be, or in our case, the grooms to be.
Oh my God.
But at the kinky one, we attached them had them stand in front of a St. Andrew's cross, and there were hard, round Lindor truffles. And all of these like muscly dykes grabbed hard candy with, again, nothing but a jockstrap, boots, and a kittle, the like white sheer thing. And pounded them with hard truffles. They had a bruise on the inside of their, like the side of their bits from where a Lindor truffle hit.
Oh
And the
my
reason this
God.
ties in, and this is me babbling, but the reason I think this ties into Rain of Blood is a reminder that no matter how deep and devout a ritual is, you can also make light of it and still have it be real.
Oh,
It
that's
was
beautiful.
right, it was their community still giving them that congregational blessing, just, in a jockstrap.
I
And then,
think that's so beautiful. Oh my God.
well, and during our collaring ceremony, we didn't do bloodletting during our wedding, but at our collaring ceremony, part of our piece was that they came downstairs from, we had it in our dungeon of our house. They came downstairs led by the people that were supporting them, and then brought to a pillow in front of where I was standing. They were in their leathers, I was in mine, but their chest was open, and I pierced over their heart, ran monofilament line through it, pierced my heart, well, pierced over my heart, obviously, and then tied it off and used the fishing line to lift them to standing, to look at me eye to eye. And
Oh,
so we
such a beautiful
used
ritual.
Right. So we used piercing and blood as a way, not necessarily just to blood connect us, but as a way for me to say, even when you are on your knees, I want you to see me eye to eye.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you could probably see it. I have tears in my eyes. That's so beautiful. Oh my God. I love that so much. Like, literally dashing tears. Oh, that's fantastically beautiful. Oh,
I mean, I've been in the kink communities for, gosh, 96. So that would make it 28 and a half years. Time is dumb. Time is real.
sorry. That's the year
Yeah.
I was born.
Was 96. Well, in 1996, I walked into Beyond the Edge Cafe, which was a kinky cafe in Seattle, Washington, wearing a cheerleader uniform and pigtails and boobs out to whatever. Because for folks who don't know, I'm transgender and used to be a 38 double D. Um, and
Bless your heart.
so Right, right, and it was also the time, because 'cause I'd been playing privately, and it was the time that I was watching a spanking scene, male top, female bottom, and
Mhm.
in the middle of it, she just said a word, and he stopped and started talking to her, and I leaned to the woman next to me and said, "What's going on?" And the woman next to me said, "She's her safe word?" And I went, "What's that mean to you?" Because I was trying not to look stupid. Because I'd been
Mhm.
playing for a couple of years at home, but
Yeah.
never in a community. I hadn't read anything online. I hadn't like looked at any of that stuff. I'd just been playing with people who I cared about.
Yeah.
And so she said, "Oh, you know that word you use to explain that you need to stop, but you don't want to stop the role playing." And I went, "Right." And suddenly my head got to look back at the 2 years before and debate, was that abusive? Was that did I learn things? What would have happened if I could have stopped or communicated? Because I didn't have any of those tools. And so
Yeah.
walking into a first time public space was like literally, I would argue, saved my life, because I was doing all
Mhm.
sorts of sharps play, blood play, gun play, right?
Mhm.
Because Americans make poor decisions sometimes. Um,
Can relate, can relate.
right? Powder burns on my tits. Do not advise. Could have killed me. Killed Bruce Lee, but yeah, it was so interesting to me, like having this ceremony with my boy, and along the way getting to pull up all of these memories of my first master back in 94, or getting to remember back to Tony DeBlaw, who was my daddy's daddy, the inventor of the leather pride flag, and thinking about what his collaring ceremony had looked like back in the 80s, and like thinking about those moments of lineages of love,
Mhm.
right? Lineages of love. And I think that there is something so powerful about what we do when we both pull from our lineage, but then also make something our own that is so beautiful.
Oh, so beautiful. I think that, I mean, that is fantastic. And having those roots, having that connection, is beautiful. I know I love family history as a
Mm,
generalized rule.
yeah.
Um, and just, a little bit back within my family, my own family history. Recently, we did a little bit of DNA and found out that there's a whole block of family we didn't know about.
Mhm.
And learning about that, while its own level of shock and awe factor and a whole bunch of things, but it was interesting the level of roots that it brought in. And so,
Mm.
and the level of kind of grounding that it brought. And I
Yes.
connected that, especially when we went through Rain of Blood and Nightfall, and we had Clea
Yes.
Dubois, who
Yes.
came and spoke with us. And as I was sitting there and I was talking to Cleo and I was listening to Cleo, and as she was telling stories of things that I've only really read about, because like I said,
Mhm.
I literally just turned 29 this Sunday. Uh,
Oh, congratulations as
Why,
well.
thank you. Thank you. So I'm still semi baby. So these are things that I haven't read, that I've only read about or heard about, and haven't necessarily gotten much of that deep connection. But
Mhm.
seeing it and hearing it at the foot of someone who is almost a parent in that aspect
Yeah.
to so many of us in the community brought me so much of those roots and showed me exactly
Mhm.
how I can make it more mine, and
Right.
made it more intimate with that aspect. And I think there is, as much as we talk about and we discuss the issues within the scene and we discuss some of the things that go wrong. I mean, I myself am presently discussing some of those issues online as they come up and as people are harmed. We do good with the fact that we group together and we have that aspect and we have those connections and roots. So, no, you bring up really great points there. Just being able to have that to reach back to make your own, um, and the shared aspects of things, the shared unity. I don't know, it makes it so beautiful.
Yeah. And one of the things we forget sometimes when we think about oh, this goes bad in the scene, this goes bad in the scene, is that the human mind, it can take 5 times as much good information to one point of bad. And so sometimes we forget that magic moment over cookies in the kitchen, or
Yep.
we forget those moments of somebody online saying a beautiful response to your post, and you only see the 10 bad ones, not the 3 excellent ones, or vice versa. More often, you only see the 3 bad ones, is what I meant.
Mhm.
Or even that one that was just a little challenging, right? There's a kink educator named Etoile DC,
Yep.
Etoile DC, as in Washington, DC. And they have a Patreon now that is
Mhm.
all about the intersections and both sides, plus the intersection of rejection sensitivity disorder,
Mhm.
power exchange, and kink, and the intersection between the two. And subscribing to that Patreon has been so cool because it's been such a reminder of the hamster wheel that goes on in the back of some of our heads,
Mhm.
right? Such a good reminder of that stuff, especially for those of us who are service oriented
Oh yeah.
on either side, the service requesting or the service giving, any of
Mhm.
those sides. And thinking about like being part of communities, even if you are alone at home listening to this, podcast, and you're currently living in Kuala Lumpur and you don't have a scene right now, you're still not alone,
Mhm.
right? You do have roots, even if they are through the pages of a book, even if they are through showing up to Rain of Blood, even if it's through having, a couple of online friendships, you are creating a web of support that goes across this current timeline and backwards and forwards. And there is a line that I learned from the beautiful Lady Speech Sankofa, who is this bodacious black non-binary neuro-spicy spirit worker slash just diviner, just amazing being, who is also a daddy lady goddess king, I believe is their full title.
I
Because
love it.
yeah, thank you so much. But is may we live so that we may be excellent ancestors,
Ah,
right? May we live so that we may be excellent ancestors. And I love that notion when we think about how we want to exist in our kink, in our relationships, in our sexuality. Who can we be so that we can be excellent ancestors to the next generation, which isn't about 25 years from now, which is also about that one person watching your scene, right? It's about that one person connecting with your post. It's about that one person, because lineages don't have, like, some of the people who are of my lineage, as it were, when it comes to rope bondage or
mhm.
education, are people twice my age,
Oh, yeah.
right? It's not about, though that is getting harder and harder to say now that I'm 45. God, I'm 45. Anyway, but those moments where we get to do that. And being in community is also why I really appreciate getting a chance to design one of the courses I'm doing for y'all, which is on determining your risk profile. And one of the things that we say about risk is, oh, you should be risk aware, right? Especially with blood stuff. Oh, are you aware of the risks of these things? So you can determine, is this too risky for me? Not a risky, and like, do I want to have be riskier? Do I like, am I thrill seeking? Where am I with risk? But
Mm.
who are you learning what the risks even are from, right? Who is your lineage of knowledge? Where are you getting that information? Because I remember during the height of the lockdown, as somebody in the United States, especially, where people were getting information was radically transforming people's behaviors because of their beliefs of what was risky and what wasn't, and what was a cover up, what was, as compared to other countries where people were able to cite the medical information, or because I speak enough science, as it were, because not everybody
Mhm.
can read a scientific journal. Since I speak enough academia, I was able to read studies coming out of Sweden, coming out of Germany, etc. But a lot of folks in the United States couldn't.
Yeah.
And so the notion of what is risk aware and how do you determine what is the right levels of risk for you? How do you have those conversations with partners? Like all of that stuff, I believe a large chunk of it is based on our connections and our lineage of trust and of knowledge. Because if you don't trust the knowledge, then you're not going to listen to it either.
Immensely. And again, when we're talking about that, when we're talking about risk, I think another thing that I discussed with Vahavta when I interviewed her here
Mhm.
is that when we're talking about risks, it's not just physical risks, there's the social risk as well.
Oh, yes. The social risk,
Because,
the emotional risk. I joke that one of the
yes.
dangerous things we do in kink is fall in love.
Oh, yes, that for sure.
And one of the most physically dangerous things we do is drive home while there's drunks on the road. End of the
Yes.
play party, we're still slightly buzzed left over from our scene. And like that is one of those dangerous things we do.
It is so crazy. And so, like, the risks of doing something, for instance, like if we're doing something that everyone else is doing and
Yeah.
something goes wrong, the social stigma is like not so much there. But if we're doing something that everyone else is not doing, and even if it's less risk than what everyone else is doing,
Yeah.
it's automatically going to have more social repercussions. And so the difference is there in the amount of risk and how we perceive risk.
Oh
So
yeah.
with
How we
reign of
perceive risk.
pain, exactly, reign of pain in our perceptions of risk. So again, for listeners listening in, sorry, nerd alert. I'm a psychologist, but I'm a research psychologist, not a therapist. And I focus on interpersonal relationships, addictive behaviors, yada, yada, yada.
Whoa.
Sorry, disclaimer. That's my shit.
Oh, I hear no sorry in this. I
Um,
hear the blessing of you opening up the top of your brain and gifting it to us. Bring it on. Bring it on. What do
that's
we
my
got?
shit. That's my shit.
I'm in.
Um, our perception of risk and risk awareness, and the way that we do that and the way that we things that we think about as risky is just so insane. I always use this kind of as my juxtaposition. The number of people who try choking, for instance, and how we perceive choking. Now, that in the larger kink community, that has shifted over the last few years, but let's just say in vanilla society, it is fairly common to try choking during sex,
Mhm.
unfortunately, I would say. It is common to see in vanilla porn, etc., etc., etc. Now, not to kink shame, it's a valid thing. Right? Right. However, when juxtaposed against, let's just say, my needles, when you ask our average person on the street which is riskier, choking or needles, or which they're more scared of, usually they're going to say my needles. But when you look at the averages, how many people a year in kink die because of sharps or needles?
Right.
How many people a year die because of choking or breath play?
Yeah. And not just in kink when we think of kink as a community or kink as a culture, but in the
Mm-hmm.
world at large. Hell, I'll choke you, baby, but I ain't, but I ain't a what is it? Whatever that song is, right? I'm quoting.
Yeah, something like that.
If anybody's interested in the statistics around of the studies that have recently come out from the world of mixed martial arts and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Evie Lupine on YouTube has a fantastic summary
Mm-hmm.
video of the recent studies that came out. Like that summary, I actually cite as a great watch on a regular basis. So please go check out what we're talking about when we're talking about the risks involved with the recent studies. But the world at large goes, well, of course, choking is going to happen. It's just a thing you do.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, both statistically and anecdotally speaking, piercing play is profoundly less physically dangerous, though it has different dangers. I'm not going to get MRSA from being suffocated.
Exactly.
So if you have a concern around MRSA and it's complicated with the complications with the fact that you don't feel well, actually piercing play is incredibly dangerous for you
Bingo.
because of how the differences between how people do their cleanliness field, their clean fields.
Exactly.
There's no such thing as a sterile field in the world of kink because you're not, unless you're in an
Yeah,
actual ER. Um,
not gonna happen. We
it's
use
not going to happen.
aseptic technique, not sterile.
Exactly. And you brought up, though, the notion of social danger. What will someone think if they find out blank? What will happen if your auntie finds out you do strangulation play? They'll be like, okay, I tried it once. I admit I was in college, not my thing, but I get it. I've heard about that one. Oh, honey child, you want to have your face pierced with a what? Right? Very, very different response. Right? I could just imagine one of my aunties in Hawaii just being like, well, I could just hear like this the concern in her voice when she doesn't want to tell me I'm bad, but she's really worried. Like I can hear it
Yeah.
from something that is, yes, I am concerned about, infections to a wound based on how I'm healing it. I am
Mm-hmm.
concerned, especially with using something like fishing line instead of something like I wanted something to move through smoothly. I am aware that I am probably getting dust part. Actually, I am definitely getting dust
Yeah.
particles in that open wound. even if I've wiped everything down ahead of time, I still know I am. And I and my partner talked 6 months earlier, not about the actual ritual because I wanted it to be a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And I had permission in our relationship to have that type of surprise be appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
But we talked ahead of time around the fact that they're not into piercing, but if it was a thing I really wanted to do, here's the things they're worried about and the things they're not worried about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I now have information, even in an authority transfer dynamic, even in an power exchange relationship. I have the ability to now make an aware choice, knowing the heart and mind of my partner.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm in egalitarian or equal pairings discussing, say, cutting, I can have that discussion either that day or 6 months earlier and then double check that day.
Yep.
Hey, this is what we're doing. How much familiarity do you have with this topic? What do you want me to tell you? Do you want to know where I learned from? Do you
Mm-hmm.
want to know, like what? And the answer, as a note, the answer, I don't know. I figured this shit out on my own and I've never gotten hurt. It's called gambler's fallacy. It's
Mm-hmm.
this notion that the odds reset every single time. So the statement, I've never gotten hurt, is the same logic that happens when you're gambling. If you're at Vegas and you're throwing the dice and you're like, you know what? I've rolled 12 good rolls in a roll. I'm going to play for lucky 13.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky in my world, at least. Right? I'm going to play for lucky roll number 13. But the odds reset every single time. And so the statement of I've never gotten hurt by this is both useful to know because it's cumulative knowledge. But if there were risks at play, you've simply been lucky on your rolls.
Yep.
Or you've been doing other mitigating activities that you might not even be aware that you're doing. Right? The fact that you're saran wrapping you don't have any surgical fields to lay down, but you saran wrapped instead of instead of just laying needles on your couch. You
Mm-hmm.
actually did something that protected you from some of the stuff that can end up in a wound. Go you just didn't realize you were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Or putting it on a plate that just came out of the dishwasher. Brilliant. You're not even wasting anything, and it just came out of the dishwasher, which is ridiculously hot to the degree of almost boiling. You've just made a much cleaner field to put all your equipment on, and you didn't realize you were doing because I know people who come into the scene and go, well, I haven't been doing all of these procedures. No, but what have you been doing?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to own all of this equipment. You don't have to take all of these classes to make your game just a little less likely to cause harm.
Reducing the risks. It's about what are you doing to reduce this risk within what is acceptable to you and your present risk budget in the situation.
Right. But we're not even always aware of the risks.
Mm-hmm.
I had somebody say to me that I was flirting with, they're just like, oh, I got tested recently, but I'm like, oh, what was on your testing panel? We were talking
Mm-hmm.
about safer sex practices. And they said, well, I'm negative for HIV. And I'm like, well, that's great. I'm actually right now a little more concerned about uh, antibiotic resistant gonorrhea that's going around. When was the last time you got tested for gonorrhea?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's actually more of a thought process for me right now. And they went, oh, and I'm like, and have you ever tested for hepatitis C?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's an encapsulated virus. The HIV is out of the body for like less than a minute. I want to say it's like 30 seconds. It's somewhere, it's
Yep.
less than a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And or it's dry, its concerns are gone.
Yeah.
Hepatitis C is an encapsulated virus that can live outside of the body for weeks, if not months.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I want to have that conversation, but people who have only ever been trained that blood equals HIV equals fear or death,
Mm-hmm.
especially for people of my age or older who
Yeah.
lived through that pandemic that is not over, it is just better managed. For us, that fear of this equals death is a real emotional response even if actual physical danger wise, HIV is actually not necessarily the top of our concern line, unless it
Hmm.
is. Unless it is.
Right.
So for each person to consider, what are not just acceptable risks for you? What are the risks that you're aware of or not aware of? But risks that are you just not going to care about or not even think about? That whole thing I said about driving home being one of the most dangerous things we do in public, kink.
Hmm.
The number of people I know who hear that joke and go, ha ha ha, and then choose to set it in the back of their mind and not think about it. Because if you think about it, every time you drive home, the number of friends of mine who would have panic attacks and never come out to a party is notable.
Hmm.
So instead, saying, okay, this is one that I'm going to worry about. I am going to worry about, dust getting into wounds and or wound care afterwards. That does matter to me. I'm not going to worry about whether or not I use a scalpel compared to a honed knife that I've then cleaned. And I'm just like, oh, those are notably different risks to me, but you've made your choice about which risks you're concerned about and which risks you aren't. And I think making sure us and our partners, all of us and our partners have understandings on which risks we're worrying about and which risks we aren't is kind of important.
And it's empowering.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
we put a lot in kink, and we don't talk enough a lot about paternalism.
Yeah.
We don't talk enough a lot. We don't talk a lot about paternalism. And while for a lot of us, the concepts of paternalism can be kind of sexy, the idea that someone can make all of the choices for you and take all of that shit away can be kind of hot on occasions. Um, overall, overarching, it really isn't if you really sit down and think about it. Being aware of what's going on with your body, being able to make choices, um, just for Reign of Pain. I mean, we're looking with Reign of Pain, we have classes for everything from rough body play to botanical chemical play going through to tickle torture to good lord. I mean, this is the idea behind this is when you think pain and when someone says, I'm not into pain, what they're usually saying is, I'm not into getting hit with things, right? So we're really trying to open this up as pain as a concept is so much broader.
Well, yeah, and pain is like this is one thing I'm going to talk about in my pain processing class. But one of the things that we call this thing pain when it's actually information.
Mm-hmm.
It's information about intensity that your brain isn't sure it wants to process and or knows how to, or it's information that is coming in saying, danger, danger, stop what's happening right now.
Yep. We don't have pain sensors, we have danger sensors.
Yeah. And some of those dangers are real and some of them aren't. I mean, I
Yep.
don't know about you, but I've certainly screamed when I thought I hit my foot on something, right? It's just like,
It's
oh,
true.
it's real. Um, and so some things that we consider dangerous that we're having profound emotional response to because we think it is painful. We
Mm-hmm.
perceive it is. And there's other folks whose perceptions and systems of pain are so overwritten that they don't notice, don't care, or don't take action when
Mm-hmm.
actual harm is taking place, physical or emotional.
And this is at the heart of what we call when we talk about neurodiversity. I think people hear neurodiversity equals being on the autism spectrum or not being on the autism spectrum, but this is the heart of neurodiversity, that everyone's nervous system and neurological underpinnings and processes and everything is diverse, that everyone sees the world differently here, and that is the underpinning of the neurodiversity theory
Yeah.
altogether. And I think that is something that we take for granted, is that literally my perceptions and your perceptions of the world, we literally don't even necessarily see colors exactly the same.
Right. Right. And that is you saying that makes me think of when I've been at vendor booths, whether I was vending or shopping at various kinky type of adventures. And I see people who are going to be the ones using a tool, whether it's a paddle or a crop or a flogger or whatever it is, right? A meat tenderizer. I don't know what you're into, but they take out the underside of their forearm, which if you're looking at, like, if you feel for the underside that rarely gets touched, it's got a similar body response on most people to the rear end. Like, there's a
Mhm.
similar physical response level. And they're testing it out on their skin. But the problem is your partner who you're going to be hurting doesn't have the same sensation. I mean, it's good to do that because it's good to
Mhm.
know, is this stingy? Is this thuddy? Oh, my partner said they like sharp things. So it
Mhm.
could, which is like single tail piercings, et cetera. Like they like intense momentarily sensations compared to, oh, they like punching and heavy, being hit by a heavy baton, right? Oh, I now have an idea of what kind of sensation this is, and on your personal scale of 0 to 10, like, where is it on your scale? But my body scale of a 4 is not my beloved's body scale of a 4.
Mhm.
Last night, they ended up slapping me over because we're switchy when it comes to SM and sex. And they were slapping me really hard in the thigh and alternating between punching and slapping. And I'm like, each time they would punch, I was like, oh, each time they would slap, I was like, yeah. Right? And that's a very formal noise that clearly all real dominants make. Um,
I love it.
because spanking and slapping, my capacity, I mean, theoretically my capacity is high, but my enjoyability factor is like low. Like, it is not a
Mhm.
thing that, like, it is not sexy suffering.
Mhm. Mhm.
It is a thing I just don't enjoy. I'll tolerate it for a beloved, or if somebody is being sadistic and they know it's an easy trick to use on me, but I hate it. If I had a choice, I would never. And it was so interesting because I had literally been topping a spanking scene less than a week ago where the person got 100 spanks over, over the lap style over the course of 30 minutes, like moving back and forth between senses, just a spanking scene. Actually, probably far less than 30. I don't know. Time is weird when you're in an encounter.
Yeah, yeah.
But two bodies, same physical activity, same amount of arm swing, same hand distribution, and our very bodies, and this in turn our brains, because our brains and our bodies are not separate,
Mhm.
they are one. People talk about, oh, my brain feels this, my body feels it. Okay, I get the concept, and yet they're interwoven. But two bodies, two brains, two beings, same hand slap, two totally different physical and emotional responses.
Mhm. And so I can't dictate how you perceive a risk. I
Right,
can't dictate how you perceive the fear of something. Uh,
right,
and so half the shit I do, I will admit, is enough to be in someone's nightmares. And I will admit that a lot of the stuff that an entry level kinkster does is enough to star in my nightmares. Um,
oh, I had been doing kink for approaching yeah, kink for 20 years. I'd been in the scene for about 18. Yeah, that sounds about right. Before I ever did the whole, like, tie someone down, put whipped cream on them thing. I'd never done it.
oh Lord, oh
People were
God,
like, oh yeah, that's an entry level thing. And I'm like, that kind of weirds me out. There's like
the sensory thing,
the
man.
sensory thing in combination with the smell thing, in
Oh
combination with, like,
no.
we upped our likelihood of seeing success by having it be lilikoi or passion fruit flavored. Like, we upped the likelihood of it.
Ooh.
But I was like, wow, like, to me, that was edgy. I even years ago I identified as an edge player, right? This was a term I used for myself. I'm an edge player. I love being beaten black and blue. I love 24/7 relationships. I love all bring it on, right? And a person I was talking to said, "So do you do vanilla sex?" And I said, "No." And they said, "So that's edgy for you?" And I went, "No." My brain exploded a little bit. And about 6 months later, I tried vanilla sex and found out that I loved it
Oh,
and
that's
added it to my
hilarious.
repertoire of play. Right? Like, yes, I would love to beat you black and blue, and or I would love missionary style sex with low lights and candles going. That sounds great. Right there.
Yep,
Part of my kink repertoire nowadays. Because
yep,
I'm also convinced what's called vanilla sex is in fact a kink.
yep.
It's
Hmm.
just another flavor of eroticism.
I don't get people. People are always hilarious. If I am on the receiving end with my partner, uh, with sex, it is in one of two positions. We are either missionary or doggy style, because other than that, I am getting ripped to shreds. I cannot handle it. Like, it's not gonna work. Like, look, people, I don't get y'all expecting this whole. I don't get this idea. And like for me, I don't contemplate this idea that positions equals kinky for me. It just doesn't work that way in my brain. I
Right.
get it if it works for other people, but it doesn't work for me because otherwise, like, I've had a hysterectomy. There's not a whole lot left, and my partner is really well endowed, so it just does not work. So people are
Yeah, when
always
there's not a cervix to
surprised.
expand, honey, like same
Exactly.
boat. And if there's not a cervix to expand the depth going on there, like,
Exactly. Like it ain't working there. I
well,
mean,
and even I think that's actually a great example. Is both is there's like an equation I'm hearing forming, which is the idea of what are the realities of the bodies at play, or bodies or
mm-hmm.
brains at play. This could be about mental stuff. Like, what are our body realities? What are our desired outcomes? And what are the positions or activities that will get us to have those things all match up? With like
Right.
this fourth one of like, what are our comfort zones around the activity being proposed? Like, that's another layer
Mm-hmm.
of it. But is if what you're looking for is to have everything suck and have you have to wear a pad again tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe a different position is dandy, right?
Right. I mean, we could do that with both of those, frankly.
No, seriously. And I
Like I'm
think it's
married a
so
goddamn pony, but um it's a pain.
in my head,
But
I'm just like,
yeah,
no, no,
you
no.
get me
I'm
there.
laughing because so funny story. Side tangent, and then back to the track. I was back when I lived in Alaska. I used to go back and forth to the lower 48, which is what we call the continental.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're still continental United States anyway.
But yeah.
Um, we're just attached through Canada. Uh, but I would fly back and forth to the lower 48 to teach. And so the TSA, because I would often fly just carry on, TSA got to know me as the person who brought interesting stuff. That's flying through on a regular basis, usually at the same time of day. And one day, actually, and the head of TSA for the daytime shift had asked my permission. Hey, can I use you as a training person because you seem to have a really good sense of humor about stuff? And I'm like,
Oh
yeah, you
Lord.
got a new person. Use me. I'm fine. One day, my bag goes off with a thing. Head of the shift manager goes, "Oh, new guy, grab that bag. We are going in the back."
Oh
I'm
Lord.
like, cool, because I know what's in that bag. Because my usual line I say to people at TSA is, just to let you know, there's an adult entertainment device or devices in that bag you're about to open up. I have no issue with them being seen, but the mom of the 7-year-old right there might be uncomfortable. So if you could show some restraint, that would be appreciated. Like, that's my usual line when my bag gets flagged. But we could take it in back. Guy, big burly dude, pulls out top layer of my clothing, pulls out my toiletries and computer stuff, gets down to the bottom, and there is a large, like forearm sized purple satin bag. And he's like, "Oh, what's this?" And I've just got my eyes closed, soft smile. The guys, like the TSA guys, like, let's see how he responds, and pulls out a replica pony cock, like black and pink speckled and like life cast. I think it's lifeequine.com or something like that. Whoever those
Yep,
people.
yep.
But the guy pulls it up. This man's jaw just drops, like, ah. His boss gives him a half second and then says, okay, I'm going to have you put everything back in its original location. And we're going to do that all from scratch again without that face. And the man said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, you and I are fine. But the granny who's going to be carrying a dick that big next time might be uncomfortable. And the guy who was the TSA guy was like, yeah, it's usually the grannies. It's true.
It's usually the grannies.
Like, it's just,
It is usually the grannies.
it's usually the people you least expect is pretty much what you.
Yeah.
But like, I think this notion goes back to, what are your desired outcomes?
Uh-huh.
What activities will get you there? What's your experience level? And what risks are you willing to tolerate? And like all of these things, because for some people, the physical enjoyment of, say, missionary style sex might be lovely, but the emotions attached to it, either of lack of experience, especially for cisgender men that I know, lack of experience of being in that position, or specifically cisgender men who are new to exploring bottoming. Let me be more clear. Or people for whom that position equals some sort of history of trauma. Suddenly, what for somebody else is like, yeah, that's an easy 101 sexy thing. Yeah, let's just do that kind of sexual position, and then we'll add some kinky stuff to it that involves some pain play.
It
Well,
becomes a whole other thing of nope.
yeah. Or what you thought was not just 101, but like 051. You thought this was like beginner of beginner. For them is actually pretty edgy. For them is a little bit scary. And if you don't know that, this is where we start ending up with miscommunications in relationship, as well as miscommunications in encounters or scenes themselves.
Yeah. And so and these factors are all entirely like, we don't always know. And someone's not going to always voluntarily offer that information.
Right. Or no to offer it.
Right. Right. And they're not going to necessarily know that they should offer it or bring it up. I'm
Quick last thought, because I have to
please,
plug it, because it was
please do.
super cheesy and cute. There's a new movie that came out. I saw it streaming, I think, on Netflix, called Red, White, and Royal Blue. It's about the son of of the American president. This is clearly in a made up world, falling in love with one of the men in the British line, and they end up with a gay love affair as 20 somethings. And the complexities around it. And there's a scene in it, though, that one of them has never topped sexually, and like goes in for the kid, and they're just like, well, and the bottom says, you're new to this, aren't you? And the guy goes, yeah, I've been doing other activities, and then alluding to the oral sex stuff they've been doing. I've been doing other activities, but I've never. And then he kind of like half freezes, and the bottom goes, I got you, we're good, let's go. And this idea that top, it never occurred to him to say he'd never do it until he was in that moment. But the bottom noticed, and the bottom lovingly brought up the question, and then offered to be a guide. And to me, that was it was talking about sexual intercourse, but, and not explicitly so, but like it was very clear that's what was happening. It was really beautiful, this reminder in Kink too, that bottoms, if you're experiencing, you see your top trying out something new, offering lovingly, hey, can I show you another way of how to hurt me even more? Right? These kinds of loving offers, as compared to the, God, is this the first time you've done this? I love this cheesy gay romance film because it was a great reminder that when we are exploring kink, when we're unsure of the risks, when we see another person who we cherish, who's a fellow top doing something risky, that we have the ability to come with love and curiosity instead of judgment, frustration, and assumption to a situation and go, hey, fellow puncher, I saw you doing some stuff over there, or even from across the room. Hey, instead of doing this, instead of with your hand hitting with only one knuckle, this is me pantomiming to the camera. People at home can't see, right? Like if you're gonna come in like this, and you're not even doing it with words, you're just catching the top's eye and saying, rotate your wrists, come in for a better blow, and showing them where to impact. A quick eye catch instead of stopping a scene, stopping their flow. These little moments of love, curiosity, offering, non-judgment, seeing that in that cheesy romance film, like just perfection. Cannot recommend enough for people who like cheesy romances.
That's fantastic. And I do a lot of for science things. Um, I do a lot of for science things, and I do a lot of research into my for science things.
Yes.
And when I do them with someone, oftentimes, to my knowledge, I am trying this out, and I have not spoken to anyone who has done this way, because I've not been able to find anyone who has done this way. So I'm in, to my knowledge, I mean, someone may have done it, but they could have been, I don't know, they may be dead for all I know. Or somewhere they may have be somewhere where I can't reach them. But to my knowledge, I'm trying this. The amount of anxiety that comes with trying that and testing these things out, as much as I try and I test it out in other ways and bring things out, the first time I'm trying that on with a living body, and on, even if I've tried it out on my own body and then I'm trying it out on someone else, it's incredibly anxiety inducing. And the people who I specifically have volunteered and understand and are engaging in this with me, just to have them, like, I don't know, reach a hand out and go, hey, I know this is scary too. Just, I'm here. I understand. Let me guide you through this too.
Whether
That's
that's,
beautiful.
yeah, it's so powerful. It really is so powerful. And I think, though, when we talk about risk, part of that is about the mitigating emotional concerns too, right? If you know you're anxiety prone with certain things, you know what I'll sometimes do? Pure transparency. I'm going to take a gabapentin ahead of time so
Yeah.
that I don't have an anxiety attack during a scene,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like use my tech as somebody who uses prescribed technologies. Um, or having somebody who I can trust to course correct me if they see me doing it a little sideways, or not doing it for its very first time in the front of a classroom.
Yep.
Right? That's not my first time I do a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I'm doing it in a play space, not having it be the front and center of the dungeon, because I've done that one with intense pain play and had a scene go sideways with me and another two presenters, the three of us having a 3-person scene in the center of a dungeon that went sideways, and people took it as a quote educational opportunity. No, it was our
Oh,
scene
Lord.
going sideways. And so now when we talk about risk mitigation, part of that involves doing it in the side of a dungeon, right? Or having a spotter who can kind of like lovingly tell people, can you like not get that physically close? This is not a class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who isn't there for our scene, but is there for the audience to kind of give them the clue that this is not a class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think looking at this equation is so beautiful, whether it's around love and friendship, whether it's around new play, new relationship styles. Like looking at these equations, I think is so important. And I'm excited to get to share that and so many more ideas in that class. And like
That
a
would be
lot. And then
fantastic.
pain processing, a lot of it's just about idea dumping.
Yeah.
It's just going to be, and then
Yeah.
people over in chat sharing more resources and tools and ideas that they use. Because I just want people who want to learn how to process their pain rather than just holding on to it and like trying to suffer through it. Though that is a system. I want people to go home with lots of new ideas and then
Yeah.
come up with their own too. But you don't have to do them all from scratch. Come learn from me and other folks and get ideas so that you can add more stuff to your bat belt.
It's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Lee. And we absolutely love having you on the Let It Rain and Rain of Blood platforms. Our attendees are always excited to hear from you, and
Oh, such
our
a
team
delight.
loves you.
Such a delight. And if people missed during the last Reign of Blood when I did my body mod class, I don't have that exact class, but I have a version of the recording over on my Patreon,
Oh,
which is patreon.com, patreon.com/passion and soul. And I have recordings of, I think, like 15 classes up there so far because I do monthly classes just for my patrons that are then recorded. And people can go check that out. Find me online with Passion and Soul anywhere, whether that's FetLife, Instagram, uh, I don't know, anywhere. Type in, I think it's the same one over on Blue Sky, right? Like I'm pretty much
mhm.
everywhere. Uh,
And I
or if you
believe we
just,
have you suggested on the Rain of Blood platform,
yes.
on the Rain of Blood Patreon as well, so you can find over there too.
Oh, yay. Yes, go check out both of our Patreons. It's actually really fun to be able to I follow, I think, 7 or 8 different Patreon things right now. And I love getting to see all these different educators provide different types of information. I love it. And it's been such a delight getting to be here on your show today.
Well, thank you so much, and we will have to have you back again, I'm sure, for more chats like this.
Yay.
Talk
All
to
right.
you later. Thank
Ciao.
you.